How's it going, everybody? This is Jason Ostrowski, and welcome to another edition of the Everything Real Estate Podcast. In today's episode, I am thrilled to have a conversation with the president of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Fox Roach Realtors and recent Riz Media Hall of Fame inductee, Joan Docktor. It's not every day that you come across the opportunity to sit down with the president of Fox Roach and have a conversation about the state of the market and where things are heading to. But that's just what we're going to do this week with Joan. Get her take on what's happening out there, not only in our local neck of the woods, but we'll talk about what's happening in the country as a whole. And we're also going to touch upon what you are feeling out there as the agents. I know right now, it can be a frustrating time. It can feel a little overwhelming. There's not a lot of inventory out there. Many of us have written multiple offers with the same buyers. And then also, we're going to talk about just how to deal with your clients and empathize with what they're going through right now in this crazy market. So let's jump right into it with Joan Docktor, and we'll pick it up on the other side. I truly have the big guns on the podcast today. I am very fortunate and very honored to have Joan Docktor with us. Joan, how are you?
I'm doing great today. Really feeling good.
If it's anecdotal, I have to say so today I should start by saying we're going to talk about the market. We're going to talk a little bit about you, the agents, and what you're experiencing out there. And we're going to talk about your clients and what they're experiencing out there and get Joan's take on everything in the year ahead and the market as it stands. But anecdotally, last week I was miserable. And I'll tell you why I was miserable is because I really, this year especially, hit the ground running with my marketing. I was ready to go. I was doing this. I was doing that. I was so excited about what I was doing. And I was hearing crickets chirping. And so I was saying to Ann last week how miserable I was. I can't believe, that I'm not, hearing a response. And then this week, all of a sudden, everything just exploded at once, which is great because I feel as realtors, we complain when we're not busy and we complain when we're busy. So there's kind of no in between, I think, for us. So with that in mind, from a market perspective, and, I see what's happening in my own little neck of the woods here in Montgomery County and the surrounding Philadelphia suburbs on the PA side. But obviously the market is not a monolith when it comes to places like the Lehigh Valley or New Jersey or Delaware, the Shore Points and Philadelphia itself. And the overarching theme and the simplistic answer to the state of the market that we always hear is that, inventory is very low or maybe even lower in December and January. And month supply of inventory is still low. Buyer demand is still really high. Listings are getting multiple offers and it's just crazy out there. However, looking at our local insights in ACE, it's much more of a nuanced picture with some areas and segments of the market much more competitive than others. And being that you get to see our Fox and Roach footprint from 36,000 feet, what do you see happening out there right now from a market perspective?
So, Jason, what you just said is really it in a nutshell. It varies from region to region, obviously, depending on price range and what have you. But if you look at the Bright footprint this year or in the last year, whatever, inventory is down so much. In fact, I saw a stat the other day that there was half the number of listings in the country than there are realtors in the United States.
Wow.
So that just goes to show you, how low inventory is. Now, this year, right now in inventory in the Bright footprint, there's about 7,000 listings. And last year, there were 8,000. In fact, there was 8,600. And so you can just see, and in the year before that, there were 15,000. So we have just been going through, yes, a house comes on the market, a house sells, and we don't have to worry too much about inventory, but we're eating at our inventory nevertheless. And so that has to eventually affect sales. And in fact, this January, sales in the Bright footprint were down from last year for the first time, in a long time. And they were up last year 18%. They were down this year 3% from the previous January. So yes, you can look at specific markets and say it's not quite so in my market, but I am hard pressed to find a market where someone said there's enough to go around. And sometimes that happens at the shore when the suburban markets might be, diminished. But I don't believe that's the case now. And there still is demand. And I am still hearing, no matter what region I go to, about multiple offers and prices just going 80,000 over asking, 50,000 over asking, 30, 100. So it just continues at a more fierce a level than it was last January because of that inventory. And so far, the increase in prices, because the affordability is tough, but that has not deterred those buyers who are buying. Now, I'm sure there are buyers who can't buy because of the pricing, but there's plenty of buyers in the market that can still buy.
It's really amazing that last year, when we got shut down and, the pandemic was in the beginning was taking its course and we kind of kicked it back into high gear come say May 2020. We saw that demand start to really get intense and you would figure at some point it would have to slow down. And it just has not slowed down. We've seen blips here and there where you're like, okay, maybe it's slowing down a little bit, but then it picks right back up again. And my career, obviously, I've been in for 15 years. It's not like I've been in the real estate business for 40, 50 years, but I have never seen anything like it. And just from my perspective, this time period, it's been very strange right now, December and January, especially because I have not seen demand be higher, yet there is such a lack of inventory coming on the market. And we are seeing that pressure cooker of, supply and demand. And you think, where does it stop? My leading into my next kind of question to you, I have heard and I've seen on social media, I've heard in just talking to agents throughout our industry that, very successful agents, even big time teams, that this is the first time that they can ever remember not having a listing or inventory to sell. It's been, 0.2 months supply of inventory, 0.4 months supply of inventory. It's just crazy. And the well kind of dried up. And then to complicate pictures we had the Omicron spike and all those good things. So maybe people are pushing their listings out later. Do you think the spring will open up that inventory a little bit, or will it be the mad dash that it's been the past couple of years, or do you think it'll be a little bit different? What's your take on where the spring market will head?
I go back and forth on that. Lawrence Yun says there'll be inventory that'll be released, and that we'll see more inventory, and it will help balance the market a bit, although it'll still be a seller's market. I was talking to someone at the Fed today, and he told me that in Philadelphia, there were 20,000 applications for multifamily and single family homes pulled in December, I think, or it might have been for the full year. There were, I think, up until December there were 10,000, and then now there's 20,000. A normal year has 4,500 altogether. Now they're going to do away with their tax abatement, so that might have something to do with it. But they're builders that are, whether they'll be condos or whether they'll be single family homes, they see the need and they're pulling permits. So I think if we get the building, more building, we'll be in better shape. We don't have a lot of ground in the suburbs to build upon. You have to go farther out. So if people are willing to do that, that will help. The other thing that might help, and I've been thinking about this today, actually, in light of our conversation, the baby boomers have been holding off and staying in their homes, and more 55 and older communities are being built. And if the Omicron kind of fades away, as it should, and people feel back to normal, and they know that the prices that they can get for their homes is so high, we may see some inventory loosen up as they move to the next stage of their lives. But I think the fear for those who aren't moving out of state to retire or to an over 55 or have somewhere to go, and you know this, and everybody knows this, I sell for this high price. I'm going to buy for another high price. Or what am I going to buy, though? Is there anything to buy? And I think that's going to be with us for a while, although the experts are saying there'll be a little more inventory, not less buyers, but more inventory. Affordability could kick some of the buyers to the sidelines, and maybe they'll rent, but rents are so high.
To your point, right before I got on the podcast with you, I was getting my hair cut. And I'm talking to my barber, and my barber's asking me questions about the market. And he said, I have friends of mine that, are thinking about potentially buying, but they can't find anything. And the rental prices out there are, he was shocked. I wasn't shocked, but he was shocked that, what some of the rental prices are going for. I said, if you can buy, you buy, because for several reasons, but the rental prices are just as insane. And he said, what do you do? And I said, well, people are, living at home longer, or some buyers potentially may be priced out of the market, unfortunately, because we don't know where the carousel stops. And I think that's my biggest fear, because I deal with a lot of first-time home buyers. And my fear is that some of them, with the increasing interest rates and the prices still rising the way that they are priced out of the market. And is that you had mentioned that earlier, but, do you feel like that's a big fear for you? Because millennial buyers make up a big segment potentially of our home buyers out there now.
Yes, I maybe, but, inflation is around, right? And so that's causing some salaries to go up, right? People, the job market is so tough so that people can demand a higher compensation, and that may help them with their buying in a market where prices are up and interest rates are up. So that might help. It could also push some away. But to tell you the truth, I think the younger educated buyer today is earning a very good compensation, and they can afford. That's who's buying these houses. So maybe they'd have to buy a bit smaller of a home, or a home a little farther from where they want it to be. But I have never seen, and prices are going up a lot. I have not seen buyers be deterred if they really want to buy a house to figure something out, to buy some house that they can live with, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I don't want to make this all gloom and doom, because last year, from a realtor perspective, it was personally my best year. I think a lot of agents had similar years. The good news for me last year was I had a lot of listings. And this year I have a lot of buyers right now. And they do fall into that trap. Even when you're selling right now, that is the number one question, is where am I going to go? Because I know I'll sell this quickly, but what am I going to find out there? And so there's that log jam. And I think the log jam just has to open up. Like you said, new construction starts need to rise. We need to find some creative solutions that I think, where there's, like I said, where there's a will, there's a way. I think we can make it work. We can find you a home. I don't want to discourage, buyers from buying or sellers from selling. It's always a great time to buy and sell real estate. So, I certainly want to make that clear. Can
I add one thing? I think that the agents have to be creative. I don't think that you can sit around, check the MLS, see if a listing came on for your buyer. And most people know this, but it should be said that that's not going to work if you want to find your buyer a home. And with your fiduciary duty to your buyer, what are you going to do outside of your comfort level, possibly, to find them a home that'll work for them? And I remember when I was first in the business, and I've been in the business a while, so I've seen these cycles. But when I was in the business in the 80s, we had the similar problem, probably not as acute, but a similar problem. And I would just call everyone I knew in the industry, every realtor. I would search their books back then. I'd search the books. I'd figure out a house that maybe they didn't ask for, maybe they're not thinking about, but that might work for them. And I heard an agent in the Lehigh Valley say one day that she had a buyer who could spend, I think, in the 400s. So she looked at some of the inventory that's not so great in a lower price range where he'd have to fix up and do an addition or do something in the 300s. And she found him a home. So there's 1 I don't know, 5 months of inventory, 1.2 months in between those two, 1.2 to 1.5 in the last year. There's inventory. It's not as desirable, but can you make it work? It's not HGTV inventory, but can you make it work? And I think it behooves us to think outside the box in that way.
Yeah. And I agree with you 100% because I just look at my clients now. One thing that I do is every day, a lot of people set up their hot sheets and they do that for their clients. They see what's on the MLS, but everybody's doing that, because you have to do that right now. And you have to be out there day one, day two, or else that home could be gone. Right. So I look at my warm list every day and think about, one thing I do is think about who are the agents that I know in the area that may be getting inventory like this. So I may reach out and work my relationships with these agents. If you have something coming on in this price point, definitely let me know, and work that side of things. From a neighborhood perspective and trying to, some people do neighborhood mailers and phone calls. I think I had mentioned this on a previous podcast. I recently did ad spends on social media saying, do you have a buyer for, do you have a listing for my buyer? If they're looking for XYZ in this area. I'm just trying to get as creative as I can and get ahead of the pace. Plus, your clients appreciate that. If you let them know that you're doing that, like my people were blown away that I was spending money on social media trying to get them a house. I think we definitely need, number one, to show that we care about them and we're trying. But number two, to, like you said, to get creative and try and find a solution to all this. So being that interest rates are going up or forecasted to go up, do you anticipate that those rates are going to have any kind of effect on the market? Like you had mentioned, they may need to buy a smaller home, but they're still going to buy. So do you think it's going to drastically cut into, say, sales or anything like that this year?
If I can go back for a moment about
Sure.
the shortage of inventory and then get to that. The other thing that I've seen agents do, and it's more of a tactic today than it was years ago, are those unsolicited CMAs that Jimmy Burgess talks about. And I saw one that an agent had done, one of our agents, and she did a video and she went through the whole presentation. She went through all the stats on a video that she sent out to the consumer, and she did get some listing appointments. So that it worked, and I would suggest that we do that with our sphere, do that in a geographic farm. We need to be more creative than the others in the marketplace in order to win the day. As far as interest rates going up, yeah, they're going to go up from all appearances and from what every economist says, and there may be three hikes this year. There may be more than that, I've read. Do I think it'll affect affordability? It definitely will, but I believe that there are life situations that people have where they have to move and they have to buy and they have to sell. And those life occurrences, whether it's having a baby, having another child, whether it's getting married and planning, whether it's someone passed away and you have to sell. I mean, there's those life situations that are going to occur. We have to be the first to find those situations. And yes, affordability might be an issue, but again, salaries are up and there are plenty of buyers that can afford it that are out there. And so if you have a buyer who can't, then look at a lower price point and see what they might compromise on. That's my suggestion. But I think the market's going to be good this year. I think that sales will be similar to last year. They might be down a point or two, but that's nothing. We're at record highs in numbers of sales. So even though we don't have inventory, and even though we're at an acute point, it has been a very, very robust market. I'd rather have this than the other way around.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, I remember after, 2009, the years of, 2000, well, the end of 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, were just miserable. I mean, we saw a lot of people dropping out of real estate altogether because there was just, there's no buyers to buy anything. I would much rather have this market. I'm excited for the year ahead. I really am. I know it'll be a challenge in certain ways, but it's always a challenge in certain ways. And so, I think it'll be a good year. And to just emphasize your point about those unsolicited CMAs, I've done them as well. I think they're a great value add for your clients, and hopefully you will get more business out of that as well. So we talked about buyers out there and the demand that's going on. A lot of them have written multiple offers. Maybe they've missed out several times. Let's just say there's agents out there that are, they've written 10 contracts with their people and they still haven't gotten anything yet. What advice would you give to those buyer agents that are kind of, struggling and throwing up their hands and saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe that we lost out on another one"? What would you say to those agents to ease their pain a little bit? Because I think we all have experienced that kind of pain and frustration, the past couple of years.
There's buyer fatigue for sure. There's agent fatigue. We are all tired. We're tired of Omicron. We're tired of the coronavirus. We're tired of this market, because it's been exhausting. And I think it's really important to acknowledge it with your clients. They're exhausted and they've lost, and how demoralizing to write offer after offer and not get a house. And so you have to look at each one individually, I would think. And what can you do to better the offer? Is there something that Prosperity could help you with their pre-qualifications and with the lock-in of interest rates? Make sure you know the products, because there are things that will help, will give you, a leg up, so to speak. That doesn't guarantee anything. But I think what most agents are telling, and what I've heard telling their buyers is, just have to hang in there. You're going to get a house. You're going to get a house. I remember when I was frustrated years ago when one of my kids wasn't potty trained. And I would complain to the pediatrician, and the pediatrician said, believe me, that your child will be out of diapers by the time they walk down the aisle. They will not always be in diapers. So there will be a time when this market eases up, and you've got to stay on it and stay after it. And it's a time where we really have to work. I mean, really hard. We always work hard. Realtors are the hardest working people I know. But now I believe you have to be more creative. You have to know the products. You have to work harder. You have to have your ear to the ground. And as you said, talk to other agents and reach out to agents. The better your relationships are with other agents, the better off you're going to be to help your clients.
Absolutely. And, just speaking of which, a story that I can tell was last year. And I had these buyers, they couldn't put a lot of money down. They were 5% down buyers, and they were continually just being beat out time and time again by cash offers. They were in a price point where there's a lot of cash offers, or people putting, well above 20% down. And I remember having a conversation with them. I was on vacation. I was in the Catskills, and I'm in the parking lot, and it's pouring rain. And I found out from the agent, we put together a great offer on this property. They didn't get it. And it's pouring rain. I have to call my people in the parking lot, tell them they didn't get it. And the wife starts crying. And I got emotional. I almost started tearing up because, you feel their pain. It is that painful at times. And it was my relationship with another agent that led us to the eventual home that they got. And so I truly believe, work those angles with those agents and try to do your best to stay ahead of anything that's coming on, and eventually it does work out.
Right. And this market will not stay this way forever. I'm not exactly sure, and nobody knows for sure what will turn it. I think it'll happen a little at a time, as things will ease up. But we've satisfied a lot of buyer needs. So those people are in homes for right now. And yes, there's still more. And there are so many baby boomers that will eventually say, I've had enough. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the plowing of the snow or whether it's the mowing of the lawn, whatever it is, or whether it's a health issue. So, unfortunately. So again, the life events will occur and people will have to sell. And we'll I think slowly but surely the builders will build a little more. Now, the problem with building is that they're building very expensive homes. More so, they're not building average sale price homes. So it doesn't really help the lower end buyers, the building, because they tend to be in a higher price range because of the cost of ground and everything else. But that will satisfy maybe those who want to move up, and then somebody can move into their homes.
Yeah, and I chuckle because some of the things that you mentioned, right now I have buyers that cover all the things that you said. You know, I had a buyer reach out to me, they have a pregnancy and they're about to have a child, they're going to move up. I have another one who just had another child, they're ready to move up. I have someone who hates shoveling snow, she wants to move, you know. So if for all those reasons that you're saying right now, or there was a death and it's an estate, it's the same thing. There's always going to be reasons for buying and selling. So we talked about buyers and the difficulty that they face. Now, I want to talk about us as agents going out on listing appointments as well, because on the listing side, just doing a little research, I see that list to sale price ratio on average is usually right now in the upper 90s to even over 100% of asking. And days on market are still incredibly low. And there are a lot of sellers out there that think that they can just put a sign in the yard, you know, the home is going to sell for top dollar. They can hire some discount agent to do the work. We're all the same. You know, I just had this conversation with the seller actually yesterday, where I had to let him know why I was worth more in this market. And what advice would you give to those, you know, listing agents out there going on listing appointments and trying to convey their proper value in this market? Because that's a challenge too.
In a very hot market, there's pressure on commission. There always has been. There's more pressure on commission than I've ever seen at this point, for all the reasons you just stated. And we need to know our value. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to have some swagger, I always say. Mm-hmm. And we need to convey to the seller that we can get them more. They'll net more with us than without us. And we can't always do that, but we need to make the best case. And using examples is often a good way to go. If you go back to the Bright study that showed, on and off market listings. Now, some of those off market listings were quiet by a realtor, but a lot of them were for sale by owners that listed with a realtor on the MLS in a normal, scenario. They netted 16 or 17% more in a price, which is way more than the 6% that they might be paying us. So I think you make all those arguments. You're not going to convince everyone, because you're right. The sellers think they're cocky. And in fact, I have there's a seller in my own neighborhood who put it on Facebook that they were selling their home, and that they told us the price. They said, if you know anybody, neighbors, let me know. So I called, obviously. I'm going to call and say, how can I help you? And she said that several neighbors had already called, and they have buyers, they have appointments, and they're not going to list it. They did agree that they would cooperate. So not selling myself and not having buyers, I called a few agents who I know work in that area, in that price range. I said, get on it, because maybe you'll get your buyer a home and get the buyer side of the commission anyway. So you're not always going to win, but how can you maneuver until this market is not as fierce? But I do think most sellers, there are those sellers who don't want to, they read everything and they think that we're not worth our value. If you have in your pocket some horror stories that are real, or stories where you can prove that you helped someone, you're going to have to really use your sales skills on this one with certain people, not everyone, because a lot of people, even though they know the house will sell quickly, they don't know where to begin. They don't know, they don't know. The other thing is staging. I think staging and what a realtor can do to help somebody grow value and, get more for their house through staging and the expertise of the agent to help them with that. Those are the kinds of things that you've got to be creative with. You're not going to just put a sign in the law. You're not going to just get the listing because you say, I'm going to put a sign in the law, it's going to sell tomorrow, and I'm going to help you negotiate these offers. That's not necessarily going to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually love the challenge of going out on a listing appointment right now and dealing with a seller like that. I actually like it because I do think it's, I agree with them. I say, yeah, you are going to sell this place, but are you going to sell it for the highest price possible in the shortest amount of time? And that's where I come in. That's my negotiation. That's, and you go down the line and sell your value that way. I do think that I vacillate back and forth. I almost feel bad for sale by owners because I can tell a story recently where someone was so excited in a neighborhood that he sold his house himself for this amount of money. Meanwhile, the market moves so fast right now that he probably could have got $50,000 worth in what he got. And he thought he got such a great deal, but you don't know what you don't know, and they don't know that they don't know. And, I use that story when I go out too, because the market literally is shifting underneath our feet right now. And what you thought was a good price yesterday is not a good price today.
I've heard agents say, I can't, whatever price I think, it's probably higher. And so when I show you the comps, it's probably beyond that, but the market will bid it up. Now you need a good agent to be able to get those multiple bids bidding up. You also need a good agent to make sure that you get the settlement. So even, people are removing clauses and they're doing all kinds of things. But I still think when you're a for sale by owner and you really don't understand and you haven't done this in a long time, probably over 10 years, you haven't sold a house, that like anything else, when you don't know what you don't know what you don't know. And things are bound to have wrinkles.
It's incredibly hard. Even when I was in management and coming out of management, going back into sales, and it wasn't that long, it's still like it's like riding a bike, but you still have to retrain yourself with the new technology and the market and what's going on out there. And, it can be a challenge. So yeah, you definitely need an experienced agent to help you in this market right now. So on the flip side, we talk about the agents and their angst dealing with their clients. But, we spoke a little bit about this from a buyer and seller perspective and what their point of view is right now, especially buyers out there. In this market, very hard decisions need to be made in the blink of an eye. You don't a lot of times have time to go back for, a second showing. You might be waiving certain things that you feel very apprehensive about, whether it be inspections or appraisal. You're even seeing people pay for transfer taxes, for UNOs. And then on the selling side, you're seeing someone, that may have to rent for an extended period of time. That's not ideal for them. There's certain things that they go through on their side that's very hard. So, not only are we experiencing that, but obviously our buyers and sellers are experiencing that too. So what would you say to the buyers and sellers out there if you were representing them to keep them on task, keep them confident, and give them a positive experience during this, tumultuous market that we're in?
That's really tough. I always have believed that an agent needs to stay calm and they need to be the calming force. And if when the agent gets excited, it creates havoc. So number one, be your calmest self, and also empathize. It's really important to empathize with their situation. And if they're concerned that they'll have nowhere to go, align yourself with that and understand their concern. And then how can you help? And how can you, and I'm sure all agents are doing this, but you really have a conversation about what will happen. We'll put the house up today. It'll sell tomorrow. You can ask for an extended settlement. You might get it. You might not. You don't have to sell if you don't get it. Really go through step by step to get them to be as calm as you're trying to get them to be. But it is not easy today with a buyer losing houses, one after another, and just getting disgusted. Maybe you say, well, let's take a break, and if something comes up that I can get you into, I'll give you a call, because this is not a transactional business. This is a relational business. And so I think that the winners will be those agents that understand that and that want to create that relationship, whatever is good for that buyer or seller and consumer. And so many of us do that already. We have, as I talk to agents, we have the best agents. They understand, they care. They're very caring individuals. And I think that is the best you can do, because you can't change the market. The market is the market. And the market determines the price. The market determines whether there's inventory. We can't create it for the market. And so the best we can do is console, and we often are psychologists, and working with people and really just empathize.
I think I think empathy should always be at the forefront of how you perceive things. Because I know, it can be a challenge for us dealing with difficult clients, but we always have to see things, or at least I try and see things through their eyes and try and get in their shoes. What are they experiencing? And they may be taking it out on you, as the agent. But you have to see things from their perspective. And I also think that setting the expectation right now for what buyers and sellers can expect, and not over promising, especially on the selling side, I think is very important, because, every seller out there right now thinks that they're going to get $50,000 over asking, at the drop of a hat. That's not always true, so don't make those promises, And would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. I don't ever promise. You give them this. You give them the facts. That's our job, to give them the facts. You help them analyze the facts, and then work with them. And I think it's really important when you're in sales, especially our business, to learn how to deal with difficult people. There's a lot of difficult people, and because of stress. I mean, this is the most stressful purchase, or sale of somebody's life. And so a lot of their not so good points come across. Mm-hmm. And you see fights amongst couples, you see all kinds of things. And so learning and reading about how to deal with difficult people, I think is really important. And I think it helped me through my career, because, I was a psychology major in college for a while, and I was always interested in that. And then I taught emotionally disturbed kids. So I was interested in how can I diffuse the situation? How can I, get them to calm down? How can I, I can't make it better all the time. Just for your own kids, you can't make it better all the time, but you try to help them feel better about what's going on. It's not easy. This is a very, very difficult market. And I think this is the best business in the whole wide world. And sometimes we go through these periods where it's not an easy market, but I wouldn't give up my career in real estate for anything, because there's nothing so wonderful as to help someone find the home of their dreams, a place to raise their families, to celebrate holidays, and to feel that they have a little piece of something. There's nothing better than, no career better than that. So we go through these difficult times and from difficult people, and in this market, you can understand why people are, maybe not on their best behavior. But wow, what a great business we're in. I
love the fact that you help, like you had said, you help people achieve their dreams, and you truly do. I just specifically, one person last year she was my neighbor growing up. She was like a second mother to me. We sold her house for well over asking. It was just her living in the house. Her husband had died years ago. It was very emotional for her. and we had to thread the needle. We had to find her a place to live. And we found her a great place in an over 55 community. There was 6 offers in on it. We beat everybody out. We got the house. We sold her house in the morning. We settled on her new one in the afternoon. And just to see the look of appreciation and excitement on her face, I still feel like choked up about it. It was just the best experience for me personally. And that's why, we deal with a lot of those, quote unquote, difficult people out there, because it's always the ones that bring us that joy, that keep us going. And I truly love what we do. So anyway, shifting gears, one last.
Oh, that's a great story, Jason. I love that story.
Thank you.
Got to remember that one.
Yeah. Well, shifting gears, one last, lighter hearted question for you. Have you ever been to Louisville before? I know the convention's out in Louisville. Have you ever been to Louisville before?
No, I've only been there vicariously by watching the Kentucky Derby. So I have never been. I hear wonderful things, and really, really excited that the convention is there this year, and everybody will get to experience Louisville. But I have not been. Have you been?
No, I haven't. But I'm looking for. I wanted to know what you're looking forward to in Louisville. I know me personally. The bourbon. I think the bourbon trails out there. I'm kind of looking a little forward to that. Churchill Downs. All that excitement. But I'm just really excited actually to network with a lot of people, meeting people through the podcast, or, just being lucky enough to be in touch with agents throughout the country. I'm really looking forward to meeting them in person. So,
well, it's a great opportunity to network, as you say. That is a really good reason to go. I have seen agents who go, they network. They get referrals for years to come. They sell 1 or 2 more houses a year because they networked at the convention. So it's if you're going and you're spending the money and you're spending the time, make sure, whoever's listening, that you are networking with others, because that is one of the best parts of the convention. And yes, Churchill Downs will be amazing.
Not to mention the fact that it's just a lot of fun, being with your peers and your colleagues and seeing the excitement out there. It's a very cool experience. So anyway, plug for the conventional on this podcast.
I love it. Thank you.
No problem. Well, Joan, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us today. And I'll be seeing you at the convention, I guess, right?
Yes. And Jason, I have to tell you that I just love your podcast. I love your attitude. I love the how you bring so many different points of view to the table that we can all listen to. And I really like your point of view as you analyze what people are telling you. So congratulations on a great podcast. I recommend that everybody listen to it for each session that you do, because it's been great. I know I listen and I learn a lot. So thank you for doing it. And thank you for all that you do for the company.
Well, thanks, Joan. I truly appreciate that. So anyway, thanks a lot. And like I said, we'll be talking to you soon.
Thanks, Jason. Bye.
That was the conversation with Joan Docktor, and it was great to get her perspective on the state of the market as we head into 2022. A few key takeaways that I had from talking with Joan. Number one, we don't know exactly when the market is going to change. I know we've been in kind of that breakneck pace ever since we really came out of our shutdown May of 2020, and it just seems like the squeeze on inventory is just getting a little bit tighter as we go along here. So it's going to require us to get creative with our marketing and do that little bit of extra work in order to get more listings. That could be talking to your fellow agents about inventory coming up. It could be networking. It could be doing the unsolicited CMAs for your clients. We need to find creative solutions in order to get more listings. Number 2, with interest rates rising due to inflation, we'll see how the market reacts to that as we move further and further into 2022. There's plenty of buyer demand out there, and it may make buyers adjust downward in terms of their pricing and what they can afford. But since there is so much demand, Joan doesn't believe that buyers will necessarily be priced out of the market, but they may need to adjust what they're looking at. And finally, number 3, try and put yourselves in your buyers and sellers' shoes. It's an incredibly emotional time period, probably even more so than a normal market because everything is just turbocharged. They have to make snap decisions on whether to buy a property one time through it, and then you have to write an offer the same day. And on the flip side, the seller may have to move themselves, and that whole process is stressful when they don't know where they're going or they have to move into a rental. So try and empathize as much as you can with your clients, understand where they're coming from, and sometimes when they give you a hard time, you may need to give them a break. Well, that's it for this week's podcast. We will be back in another couple of weeks with a new topic, a new guest. And as always, if you want to hear something that we haven't covered yet, please reach out to me, jason.ostrowski@foxroach.com. And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, be sure to do so and leave us a review. We value your feedback and it helps us to reach more people. And until next time, this is Jason Ostrowski saying stay safe out there. Stay selling, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Everything Real Estate Podcast.